So the main reason that we are here obviously is to discuss the negative fund balance of Fund 112. As detailed in this letter, there are several attributes that led to this negative fund balance, and some of those are decreasing in dollar amounts of operating transfers in, 2 failed redevelopment area efforts, decreased staffing levels, and then revamping of the CDBG documents that happened within the last few years. With that said, the CDBG program has had a history of successes as shown on the grant chart, which is included in your board packet, and I can also pull up on the projector if there's any questions. The grant chart basically details all CDBG grant awards since 2002. It goes over what the activities were spent for, if there was any staff reimbursement costs to the county, and then if any was returned to the state that was unused funds. With more recent efforts, the division has released 2 RFPs, one for Health and Human Services for a Parks and Recreation, a permanent housing feasibility analysis, and then the other one for HPUD for a Parks and Recreation master plan. We have also released a microenterprise technical assistance program that Alliance for Workforce Development is administering on our behalf, and they are currently assisting 16 businesses. We just had 2 business loan approvals, which totaled over $375,000 and retaining 39 employees. And then we're also working with the underwriter in the state of California to get 2 other business loan requests approved for over $219,000, which would retain 13 employees for both of those businesses. The division has a loan portfolio balance of 21 loans. I believe we're at about $640,000 in principal balance on all of those loans. The 2 of those 21 are business loans, and the rest of the 19 are housing rehab loans from prior programs. As you can tell, significant benefits to Lassen County can be realized by administering these programs. It is difficult to determine how much it costs to secure and administer the programs and quantify the benefits provided to the county in regards to job creation, retention, quality of life, essentially the economic footprint that these grants provide. The info provided in this report is intended to enable the board to make informed policies decisions regarding the division's projects and programs. Are there any questions? I know that's a loaded question.
Good reading. You should come read those.
Well, I summarized very quickly a very long letter into.
I have one. On your little graph here, on the orange, it says, well, I've got 2 questions. One is on the orange amount to expend before expiration. Is that expiration of what?
The expiration of the grant. So for the orange, it's going to be 10 STBG 6721, which we still have the $400,000 in the housing rehab program for South Lassen County that has not been expended. And we have done a very large marketing campaign for the residents down there. We have sent program mailers to all residents in Census Tract 406. We have done radio announcements, we've done newspaper announcements, we've done community meetings, and unfortunately the one application that we did receive, he unfortunately deceased. So we do not have any applications and have tried several times.
And that's going to turn to gray.
That portion of it will turn to gray. The additional is going to be under 10 EDF 7266, and it's going to be under our microenterprise assistance programs. The loan portion has been undersubscribed. It's very difficult to find a business that wants to take a loan that has 5 or fewer employees and the owners themselves income qualify. So that's been a little bit more of a difficult program to administer.
And then my other question is the yellow and black proposed expenditure to staff.
Yes, so with the loans that were just approved, or that are going to hopefully be approved, that would be the activity delivery that we would receive off of those loans for underwriting and for staff costs.
So,
and then the purple, that's just what you're proposed to be expending in this right here.
The purple is going to be the next agenda item that we're going to be discussing. That's going to be a possible application.
Oh, thank
the
you.
on the graph here, the color where it says amount awarded, the blue.
Yes.
I mean, but, so by this graph here, it doesn't show that there's been any money awarded since the 2010.
Well, actually, there's a mistake on the chart. 2012 the green should be blue.
I thought.
Yeah.
Geez, otherwise it's-
Yeah,
you guys been-
I just noticed that actually.
Just a comment or two.
So, let me just.
Oh, okay. You looked at me, you gave me the look.
So that.
Thought it was my end.
Okay, well, that's good. Gee, I was going, what's going on? Because, in all those other reports, there's indication that
Yes.
money was being awarded.
And we did, and that grant would have been a little bit more, but unfortunately, we were not awarded the public facility portion of that grant, which would have moved that grant over $1 million. So it was just about $583,000 that we were
Yeah.
awarded.
Yeah, I ran out of ruler, didn't quite get all the way from where to what, so that's about 580.
Yeah, it's about $580,000.
And then, so, okay, and then okay, so 2013 is when we had to put the brakes on because there was some questions about the program. And then Brian got it extended in funds and now we're,
I would say that was about 2011, 2012 is when we went through mainly the staffing changes. 2013, we weren't eligible to apply with the new CDBG regulations that a jurisdiction
Yeah,
can't apply
that's right.
until 50% of their award is expended. And unfortunately, with that new change, we did not receive a contract till after a year. From, as you can see, the execution date was 3/11 of 13. We were noticed of funding in 2012. So unfortunately, with the process at the state, that made us ineligible to apply the next
Which,
year.
by the way, is intentional, Maureen Anderson, for building services. You know, they're trying to spread it out so jurisdictions can only apply every other year. I mean, that's a technique they're using. And if, you know, you had a super crew and you were doing the kind of programs that allowed for it, maybe you could do it every year. But it's definitely a tactic.
And just to note, there was no jurisdiction that met that 50% rule in the 2013.
okay. Then I had a question, on page 4 of 6 on this summary sheet. About 3/4 of the way down the page, it says the loan amounts listed do not include the administrative reimbursement amounts totaling over $141,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then, on the next page, about the same position down the page, it said in short, the grant loan division has continually operated with high expenditures and insufficient revenues. So, but I mean, how, what's the relation? I mean, so basically, like, you know, we know we're getting in 141. We know that operates, you know, with high expenditures, but, you know, I mean, just how high, is it like, do we have $190,000 is gonna take, so we're running at a 50 grand negative, but what are we getting for the 50 grand? There's 2 employees, there's 39 jobs.
Well, that $141,000 won't come back all to the county. We do procure out for contracted underwriting services. I'm not experienced enough in underwriting businesses, so a portion of that funding does go out to the underwriter. It also go out to title companies, appraisal costs. That is just stating that's what's going to be able to pay for the loan to be completed. Obviously, there will be some staff reimbursement costs. At this time, I don't know how much of that $140,000 will be. It's going to be dependent on the final invoices that I receive for all the services that were used to underwrite the 2 loans.
And so that would go to pay not only underwriting, but maybe appraisals, things like that. And
Title reports.
in the before the exodus of employees, there was actually an employee in economic development that had the certifications to do underwriting, and that's ideally what you would have in-house, so that money would be seen coming back to the county instead of going out to an outside person out of the area.
But then, and then in your graph, with the yellow with the black lines going through it, says proposed expenditure by staff. But then there's been a department, but there's nothing indicated for the expenditure for 2013 or 2014.
Correct, because we don't have, we didn't have a grant from 2013, so we won't be receiving any administrative reimbursements on that. And then 2014 is to be determined at the will of the board of what we're going to be applying for, and that'll be in the resolution. If we apply, there will be a detailed analysis of the activity delivery and general administration that will be received.
But it says proposed expenditure to staff. I mean, you still have staff and expenses, whether there's grants or no grants. And so there should be a dollar amount there.
Well, that's just what we receive for the grant, so that's what we were actually charging. As far as any fees that are not charged to the grant, say, take for example A87, we do not charge those to the grants. That's not something that's included in this chart.
So, I guess, still, I mean, there must be a way to, you know what your estimated, department's gonna bring in, and it should be fairly easy to know what the costs of it are. And then, you have and it's not, I mean, who wouldn't want it to be like cost neutral, but even if it's not, there's a benefit, to the negative, and I guess I've always that's kind of what I've always wanted to see, just how much is it costing the general fund? And it's okay if it is, but what is it? Okay, it's costing like $1.5 million, and we're getting in, 25,000 in reimbursements, and we've created 2 jobs, then whoa, something's wrong here. But I mean, if it's a negative cash flow, 60,000, we're helping 40 jobs and keeping 2 people employed, and you can say, man, well, that's good value for money. So, is there,
So let me, if I may backtrack a little bit. This discussion was sort of, the genesis of this discussion was concern over the business assistance program and some of the liabilities that are incurred while you operate those programs. One of which is employment retention or creation. And when you do these loans, you have these windows where the government, our government, can be solely responsible for paying back these loans if something were to occur in the negative for the person getting the loan. So we were sort of concerned about that, and we were talking about that with the board. We wanted to make sure they understood that, and we talked about the loan committee being something that the director chooses versus the board, and just some general concerns. And so it was a direction that, we, the board, don't have enough information to maybe make some of these decisions and want more information. That's what we've tried to do. Now, that said, it led to this overall discussion, and I'm sensitive too about this letter because it's critical, but it's easy to look in the rearview mirror and be critical. As the letter says, there are some very unfortunate circumstances that led to the cash balance, and so I recognize that. But in general speaking, you have 2.5 FTEs. That's probably near $200,000 in weighted FTEs in that neighborhood. So that's happening every year. And so to answer your question, it's sort of like putting gas in the car. How much do you want to pay for gas to get down the road so many miles? And those are hard things to quantify, especially when, as Jenna said, in one case we're going to retain 39 jobs. How do you quantify that? Well, you don't really know because you don't know how long the jobs are going to be retained. But 39 jobs is a lot of jobs. So, there are those factors. I think, as the letter says, if you're really paying attention and working on programs, and this is where I'm not sure, like Mr. Robson said, you need 5 people in the department to really work the program. So you have like this inverse equation where you need a lot of people to work the programs to get the money back to support the programs. I'm not sure that's totally the case, but I certainly think the fund balance could be significantly lower if these things hadn't occurred in the past. I don't know that you will have a negative fund balance, but I don't think you're going to be in the positive. But these are all the things that the board needs to wrestle with in terms of the benefits to the community and the county, of which I think there are many. But I certainly think that some of the programs need some attention and some policy. I think the board should look at what's happening and make sure that's what they want to be happening, like with business assistance. and the director deciding who the loan committee is, and knowing full well there's these liability gaps where we could really be on the hook for a lot of money. So those are the things we wanted to impress upon you. I think I'm in favor of continuing the programs, but you're the ones looking at the fund balance.
Well, in addition to that too, as far as being able to forecast of what the division's gonna be able to do and not do is, the Census Tract 406 housing rehab program is really evident of what could go wrong. We technically would have received over $76,000 in administrative reimbursements, and we're not going to receive that now because the program was unsuccessful. So that obviously is going to lead to a further negative balance of funds that could have been returned to us. And so your being able to project is not necessarily something that's easily done. It's going to be based on if people are applying to these programs, if they're successful in our administration of them.
So it's, oh, go ahead, Tom.
Okay,
I don't need to hold.
okay. Obviously, we're struggling a little bit with this program. What do we do to fix it?
Well, bleeding into the next agenda item is where you pick from a menu of programs, the SuperNFO, what we do every year, and strangely enough, what we would recommend is doing the same kind of thing we did in Doyle and Hurlong, which was unsuccessful. We're proposing that we do it in Westwood. Because I think, I wasn't around when the decision was made for Doyle Hurlong, but that, when you make those decisions, you really do have to look at the clientele and the concentration of people and, see if that cost benefit is there. I think you'd have a better bang for your buck in Westwood, frankly. You can go door to door there. It's hard to go door to door in South County. People are more spread out. But those are, factors that go into the decision-making about what kind of programs you want to do. But, the failure of the South County grant doesn't necessarily mean it would be a failure in Westwood or somewhere else.
Okay, so what's your reasoning for the failure in South County?
I honestly think that it had to do with loans. I don't think any of the individuals were interested in getting a loan.
Yeah, I mean, you
Have we
use the
made
word
an effort to
grant and
reach out
loan
to
are not
people?
synonymous,
Have we made an effort to reach out to people and say, hey, why didn't you take advantage of that?
I'd say that the amount of effort that Jenna and her crew expended in South County is way beyond what is reasonable at this point, because I will remind the board that we, with Mr. Dolly's help, got an extension. And so, I mean, we mailed everybody in that census block. We were on the radio. We were in the newspaper. I mean, we had meetings. I don't know what more we...
I understand all that. I was there for one of them. But we haven't reached out to find out why it was unsuccessful.
Well, my immediate knee-jerk response would be people don't want a loan even if it's low interest. These are not the kind of times people want to take out loans. And I don't know what the motivation is down there, but I don't know if it's the same in Westwood.
It probably isn't, yeah.
So,
Okay, let's switch a little bit. Now, this underwriter, I've heard that we've had performance issues with this guy.
well, I'm not certain that I'm very satisfied with the overall performance. The person knows a lot, and we really didn't have any other options. Jen is about halfway through her training to be an underwriter, and at some point in the future, that would be a much better situation for a variety of different reasons. One is, as I spoke to earlier, that any kind of underwriting would come back to this office through the grant instead of to somebody in Chico or Reading.
Who really doesn't know our area.
Well, I don't know about that, but the program income would be coming back, and it would be an in-house operation, but that takes time. And like I said, she's about halfway through that training.
I just had one more question, and then Tom, bulldogged his way in there.
Because you wouldn't shut up.
Okay, it's, okay.
Yeah, Jim has been pretty quiet.
My
Larry's taking over.
my last question for the time being on page 6 of 6 on the last paragraph, when I was reading it, it says, it is difficult to determine precisely how much it costs to fund 112 to secure and administer the programs discussed in the memo. And then my note is, like, why? Why is it?
Now,
like you
I
said-
read that this morning too, and that wasn't exactly on target.
Yeah.
Not including myself or Galen or anybody else, that you have 2.5 FTEs that are given.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be roughly around $200,000 when you weight the rates.
Yeah, yeah. That's-
It wasn't well written, apologize.
Okay, no problem, okay. At least you know.
I think it was more, what it was meant to say is it's harder to quantify the benefits.
Okay.
And that just got mixed up.
From my perspective, I believe that it has to be done correctly and all that benefit, But with that said, you can't expect the board to keep blindly supporting a program that isn't right. It's not right to the community, the taxpayers, or even to the employees or anybody. I mean, no business just keeps on blessing a program without knowing what the bottom line is. I mean, only government does that, So I think, if we support going forward, we need to have it on our meeting for like December. Because I'd still like to be involved with some decisions on this. And we need to have basically a P&L for the company, for this division, from January 1, the costs, what loans did we get out, how much are we gonna be back in, and what benefits did we provide. I mean, it's very, very simple. Target it on that, and then going forward, I mean, the board could give its blessing, feeling good that it's doing so, being a good custodian, of the resources. And there's nothing to be ashamed of if it runs in the red, because that's only one side of the story, just depending on how much red, and then you have the other side. So it's a double thing, and I have faith, and you want to see it because you don't want to give up, because the one thing if you give up, there's going to be zero gain. That's like a given. But still, to go forward, you have to do so with some figures, So that's, couldn't we have that in December? Are you guys keen on that, to actually have a report card and a P&L on this thing, to see what it's actually costed to run for the year? Anyway, okay.
Yeah, County said that it's basically been a failure down in South County. And my guess would be maybe people are not interested in giving, well, maybe, first of all, maybe they're not qualified, but these loans, I'm sure, have a long list of
Thank you.
qualified. And it's not for anybody, a lot of people don't qualify.
Tom will co-sign.
And then the other thing is, being that there was a large amount of information required from the person, they are not willing to give that information.
That could definitely be another reason.
And so they don't apply for it. I mean, they get the papers and look, gee, they don't want a lot to become public.
Yes.
Or even if it's not supposed to be public, still they're not trusting. And a lot of people just don't want to give that information out, so they choose not to take the loan.
Well, actually, if I may just jump to the next agenda item for 1 second, we are experiencing that very problem with the Levitt Lake CSD proposal where they want their sewer fixed up. We have to income qualify that area, and we've had a lot of refusals. And so it's challenging.
From the residents in Levitt Lake?
Hmm?
From the residents in
Mhm.
Levitt Lake, or the?
They went through some USDA questionnaire recently, and so this seems more of the same, and it's an irritant, but, so those are things that you are up against, for sure.
Jim wants to chime in.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. When I look at this here, and I appreciate the history and the volume of paper that we have here to go back and look on it, and I would have to say, as a preface, that the staff we have before us are only like basically primarily responsible for here. So a lot of what we see on here was predating existing staff. So you know, oftentimes when the criticisms are brought forth, they take it personal because it's directed towards, they think they internalize it and direct it towards him. So any comment I make, I want you to appreciate is not about you and today, but in terms of just the overall criticism of the program that predates you several fold in terms of the people at the staff level that were involved. And the board, I think, has been good-natured in terms of trying to accommodate staff, and more importantly, trying to accommodate its constituencies over the years and trying to, do something that is productive. Long ago, I lost my enthusiasm for the success of the program because I think the program historically it's almost like it's doomed to fail. And in part it's due to the fact that the complexity of the regulations, they kind of lure us in, and through us we lure the private folks in from the community on the pretext that we're going to be able to accomplish all these wonderful things. And once they get everybody hooked, maybe you can compare it to a drug habit, get everybody hooked, and then they start throwing at you the complexity of the details are such that it's mind-boggling, I think, to staff to a degree, maybe overwhelms them, and trying to translate that to the guy on the street. I tell you right now, I don't see how we can expect, success in those kind of failures. So we put ourselves at risk for any sort of program expenditure that goes awry. So we're at risk there. We're basically, if the program doesn't succeed, as Jenna has just pointed out, we're on the hook or at risk of having to cough up whatever money for staff, because we've already spent the time for staff, so we're not going to recover that. We were taken to task, the board gets beat up quite a bit, and maybe they deserve to be beat up. We got beat up over the LRA stuff. I mean, in the so-called $600,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 that were basically wasted, and what it really was staff time and paying for the utilities and the rent and all this stuff for trying to create a critical mass down there, and it was done on an incremental basis, much like this right here. So this $500,000 is a cumulative increase in this fund because we failed here, and so we got to cover the staff time. And to be honest with you, we would have been better off if we would have taken those pots of money that we've been patiently putting forth. And I have to say, I haven't always supported those. Rarely have I, because of the fact that I don't see results early on. If this was a private sector venture, and I think you pointed it out very correctly, Mr. Chairman, after about the second year, this program would have been shut down because people don't want to waste their money. But the public sector has this expectation that they keep trying the same old thing over and over and over again. I think we would have been better off to take these pots of money. We told the state, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need your involvement. And by eliminating them from the process, we're not trying to deal with these SOPAs and NOPAs and everything else, in terms of the grant guidelines and so forth, and just gone out and invented our own program and expended our own funds, with, as we would see fit to do in terms of accountability. The people that we're really dealing with, for the most part, can't compete within the conventional financing means. So there's a reason why they are in the boat that they have. And I know one business here in town was looking at doing some major expansion and was looking, the opportunity. They were kind of lured in, and they, said, okay, fine. But by the time they got done going through the cookie cutter machine, they just it was like they wished they had never ever heard of these economic development programs. And our staff takes the brunt of it because they're the ones that they have to deal with. But it wasn't this model wasn't created by Jenna. It was created by who knows, a whole host of folks. And so to me, this purple, I can tell you right now, until we see some sort of a retooling, rethinking, there's no way in heck that I am willing to support going with that, because the history before the current operation and looking at the pictures from the current operation is not a pretty picture. And I'm not interested in investing more money that we really don't have or could be utilized maybe more effectively somewhere else within the county operations than to go after another one of these grants. I don't think we have the capacity, and more importantly, we don't have the critical mass of programs or projects out there that the communities come forward with that can meet the test and get done within the time frame that's there. I mean, you're still trying to expend funds from 2010, and we're now into 2014. And as you've indicated, that orange is going to turn to gray. And when you look at all these gray blocks going back, except for